Alright, so like many of you out there, I've been getting through my Battlefield 6 open beta withdrawals by grinding out Battlefield 2042. Why? Well, one, because after the Battlefield 6 beta, I needed something to play, but also, like many of you I'm sure, I wanted to unlock those juicy BF6 skins by completing the free battle pass. I thought, okay, one last push, one more grind, how bad can it possibly be? Well, 4 weeks later and I've gone through about, I think, halfway through the battle pass, and you know what? I'm done. I just can't do it anymore. There's something about Battlefield 2042 that just feels off. Something I just can't quite put my finger on. Maybe it's the dodgy mouse input, you know, no matter how much I play with the settings, something feels off here. It feels like I'm fighting against my crosshair half the time when trying to track enemies and control my recoil. Maybe it's the specialists with their annoying gadgets and stupid voice lines. And yes, I know that those voice lines have now been removed from the game, but this will forever be burned into my brain.
That was something, right? Yeah, Angel does it again. Don't be sad. This is just how it works out sometimes.
And don't get me started on the maps, you know, the ones that play like a wide open paintball field. Yes, again, I know they've made changes, and yes, there have been some improvements for sure, but they are still, in my opinion, some of the worst, if not the worst maps in the entire Battlefield franchise. So, yesterday, I decided to do something unexpected, something crazy even. Instead of suffering through more 2042, I booted up Battlefield 5 again for the first time in probably a couple of years. And to my surprise, I actually had a pretty good time. The gunplay, the movement, the maps, it all just felt good, like Battlefield. And it got me thinking, were we too harsh on Battlefield 5 all those years ago? Or am I just looking back with rose-tinted glasses because 2042 was such a complete and utter mess? That's the question I want to explore today. So when Battlefield 2042 first launched, as you all know, it was a mess, and that's an understatement. To their credit, DICE has done a lot of improvement over the years, but even now in 2025, something feels fundamentally wrong about it still. The mouse input just feels wrong. There's something about it. You move your mouse and the aim just doesn't feel right. I don't know what it is, but something is not right there. The specialists, they were supposed to add variety, but instead they stripped away the class identity that made Battlefield work for years, decades even. The maps, oh my god, the maps. Don't get me started. They're massive, they're empty, way too open. There was just no grit to them whatsoever. You spend more time running than you do actually fighting. It was just appalling. And then the abilities, the grappling hooks, the turrets, the shields. Oh, don't get me started on Doza's shields. All that stuff just makes the game feel like just chaotic, not tactical. It feels like a hero shooter, not a Battlefield game. Now, don't get me wrong, 2042 isn't awful anymore, but in my opinion, it still feels soulless. It doesn't feel like a true Battlefield game. And that's why I found myself going back to Battlefield 5 recently. And you know what? Booting it up again after many years, I was surprised. The first thing that hit me was the gunplay. It's tight, it's crisp. Bullets actually go where you aim. There are recoil patterns, yes, but they can be learned, and there's no random bullet deviation. Gunfights feel intense, fair, and skill-based. If you point your crosshair on top of someone and press the trigger button, then your bullets are going to go where you're aiming. The movement also feels great as well. Vaulting, sliding, crouch running, the ability to roll when you drop outside of windows from high levels. It's all fluid in a way 2042 could never be. And don't forget, we're in a state where in 2042 there is still no swim animation. You have to break the game by meleeing the water in order to get underneath it. It is just a joke still. Then you get to the maps. In my opinion, they were always pretty good. Not great, but they were pretty damn good. But then the Pacific DLC maps in particular, chef's kiss, like absolutely stellar. Iwo Jima, the Solomon Islands, and Pacific Storm, they've got that perfect battlefield flow where infantry and vehicles clash. There are natural choke points that come about, and every match tells a story. It honestly felt like coming home, and it made me wonder, if Battlefield 5 feels this good now, then why did we hate on it so much when it first launched? So, let's rewind. Why did Battlefield 5 flop so hard at launch? Well, for starters, there was the reveal trailer. Oh, the reveal trailer. You guys remember this disaster? Instead of a gritty World War II reveal, we got that sort of neon-saturated, parkour-filled, this isn't a World War II at all trailer, complete with some chick with the most stereotypical Cockney British accent, a prosthetic arm, and a cricket bat for a melee weapon. And look, representation isn't the issue here. At least it wasn't for me. The problem was the tone. You know, after the grittiness and frankly super dark tones and themes of Battlefield 1, fans were expecting a serious, grounded World War II game, but instead we got what felt like Fortnite with Spitfires. Then there was the setting itself. Battlefield 1 was a massive hit. It made World War I work, and that was something a lot of fans, including myself, were a bit concerned about, but it turned out to be a pretty damn good game in the end. But then after that, I think a lot of fans were hoping and expecting Battlefield to go back to a modern combat setting, and instead DICE gave us another historical shooter, and not even a complete one, more like a greatest hits of World War II sampler. And then the launch, like, you know, what can I say about the launch? It was rough. Not only were there bugs everywhere, but then there was also the infamous saga of the time to kill changes. Now, I don't know if you guys played it or were aware of this, but basically DICE just couldn't make their mind up about what they wanted the game to be, whether it should be more arcadey or a super tactical shooter, and we basically yo-yoed back and forth for months with damage values going up and down. At first, TTK was so low that it felt like you died in just a couple of bullets or in one frame, and then all of a sudden they nerfed the damage drop off so hard that it felt like you were shooting a Nerf gun and you needed an entire magazine to take down one enemy. And they went back and forth on this for like, I can't remember exactly how long, but it was a good few months and players absolutely hated it. Then on top of that, there was the DLC roadmap that just completely fell apart. We never got Normandy, which is arguably the most notable and defining theatre of all of World War II, certainly the most well known after Saving Private Ryan and games like Medal of Honor back in the day. And we also never got the Eastern Front. Huge iconic battles in places like Stalingrad were just missing. It felt like half the game was cancelled and it was a massively missed opportunity. So yeah, the backlash at the time was real and fair. But here's the thing. Once you strip away the marketing disaster and the cancelled content, Battlefield 5 is, in my opinion at least, actually a really solid game. The gunplay, honestly, some of the best in the series in my opinion. Like, it hands down better than 2042 and maybe even better than what we saw in the Battlefield 6 open beta. Guns feel meaty and pretty much all of the weapons are viable in some capacity. Now, I will say that the lack of weapon attachments was a massive drawback, and whilst it makes sense for World War II weapons to not have attachments, I think the weapon specialization system they introduced didn't quite scratch that itch for myself and many other players, but regardless of that, I still think the gunplay in Battlefield 5 is really, really good. Maybe some of the best gunplay that we've seen in the entire franchise. The classes. You guys remember classes, right? The classic assault, medic, support, recon. The setup worked beautifully. Each class had clear roles. None of this specialist nonsense. And let's not forget that BF5 was the game that introduced the squad revive mechanic, which I think we can all agree has become pretty universally loved. And it's great to see that not only have we kept that in Battlefield 6, but they've even improved upon it with the ability to drag your down teammates whilst you revive them now as well. Vehicles. They were deadly, but not invincible, and overall pretty well balanced, I would say. Now, I'm not a vehicle player when it comes to Battlefield, so I'd be keen to hear others' thoughts on this that maybe are, but from an infantry perspective, if you were smart, you could absolutely take out tanks and even aircraft with the right tools. If you were smart and placed a couple of smoke grenades and ran up with some dynamite, you could easily take out enemy armor. And the introduction of the Fliegerfaust, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it was basically the bazooka that you could use to shoot down planes, definitely made it viable to take down some of the smaller fighters at least. And honestly, it was probably a little bit too OP when it was first introduced, but as an infantry player, I loved it. In terms of balancing decisions, no behemoths, no hero kits, just Battlefield at its core. I think one of the biggest complaints with Battlefield 1 was the introduction of behemoths and the hero kits. It was just annoying to play against them, and it just didn't make the game feel fun. If you were massively winning against the enemy team and they just suddenly got a behemoth and the game just completely flipped, then it's like, what's the point? Now, in terms of the performance and the visuals, this is Frostbite at its peak, in my opinion. BF5 still looks gorgeous today. The explosions, the destruction, lighting, it is breathtaking. And okay, yes, it's not quite as cinematic as BF1 is, but it still nailed the gritty World War II vibes once you were actually in game, in my opinion. I mean, the map Devastation is a great example of this. This is a great infantry / tank focused map that does a really great job of giving that gritty World War II vibe and bringing it to life with the immersion similar to what we saw in Battlefield 1. I mean, just look at the sea point alone on this map. It looks great with the destruction, the lighting, the particles flying around. It is just chef's kiss. When you're in the middle of a firefight gunfight on Iwo Jima, bullets are flying everywhere, sand's kicking up in your face, planes are roaring overhead. That's Battlefield, and honestly, I think Battlefield 5 nailed it. So, were we too harsh? I think it's complicated. The criticism at the time was definitely valid. EA and DICE messed up the reveal, and they fumbled the launch big time, and then they abandoned content that players were desperate for. Also, some of the decisions on cosmetics were definitely questionable as well. I'm talking about the Tom Cruise character, or that Captain Birdseye dude. I don't really know what they were thinking here. Well, that's a lie. I know that they were obviously thinking about microtransactions, but come on, these skins definitely felt out of place in a Battlefield game. But gameplay-wise, Battlefield 5 holds up incredibly well in my opinion. In fact, compared to 42, it feels like a completely different game and the last true Battlefield game in the franchise. Now, maybe the real lesson here is that sometimes our expectations shape how we receive a game. Back in 2018, people judged, including myself, Battlefield 5 for what it wasn't. You know, it wasn't a Battlefield set in a modern setting, which is what everyone wanted at the time. But now with 2042 as a comparison, I think we can finally appreciate Battlefield 5 for what it was. And honestly, I think if BF5 launched with all of the same problems and issues that it had with its original launch, but it was set in a modern combat setting instead of World War II, I think it wouldn't have gotten as much hate as it did. I really don't. So, I don't know. Were we too harsh on Battlefield 5 all along? Maybe. Or maybe 2042 was just so disappointing that it forced us to reevaluate. I certainly have. Either way, going back to Battlefield 5 reminded me what I love about this franchise. The gunplay, the maps, the squad play, it's all there. I will also say though that from what I've heard, Battlefield 5 had, or maybe even still has, a huge issue of being plagued by cheaters. Now, I've personally only ran into 2, maybe 3 cheaters in the hundreds and hundreds of hours that I've played, but from what I understand, if you're playing on the Asian servers, you're almost guaranteed to have a cheater in your lobby, and that's obviously not acceptable and completely ruins the game for everyone. And it's something I really hope that we don't see coming back with Battlefield 6, because tackling cheaters can absolutely make or break a game. Anyways, that's it. Just wanted to share my thoughts, and I'm curious to know what you guys think. Have we been too harsh on Battlefield 5 this whole time, or is the hate that it got completely justified? Curious to hear your thoughts here, so let me know down in the comments below. If you own Battlefield 5 again, honestly, I would seriously recommend giving it another shot, and then, you know, come back and let me know what you think. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and to subscribe to the channel for more content. Your support is truly very much appreciated. I really do mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.